Good morning, colleagues. I think we are almost there, so I'm being very cautious of the time. But welcome to this webinar on innovations in production of statistics. And I would like now to invite Rachel Bevan, Director, Statistical Division of ESCAP, just to give her some brief opening remarks. Rachel.
Thank you so much, Alec, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are in the world. It's my huge pleasure to welcome you to today's webinar, which is on innovations in the production of economic statistics. And I think we are all seeing, aren't we, remarkable advances in the way that official statistics are being produced. We've seen the advent of big data, artificial intelligence, machine learning, and all of these things are really starting to change the collection, the analysis, and the dissemination of economic data. And what we're seeing, I think, as well, is traditional methods are being complemented and enhanced by these innovative techniques, resulting in more timely, more reliable, and more comprehensive economic statistics. And I think the real emphasis there is really around this traditional methods being complemented and enhanced by innovation, not necessarily looking to kind of replace some of those traditional things, but really to look at what we can learn in terms of complementing and enhancing them. But we also see as well, I think, the demands of policymakers are increasing all the time. They want more and more real-time data. Not only do they want that data immediately, they want it really granular data. So data, that really can be broken down to the smallest possible groups. And that's really needed to help them in decision making. So to meet these demands, we know that we're going to have to be much more innovative than we have ever been before, and that we're not going to be able to just slightly improve on the current methods. What we really are going to need is that innovation. But we also have this huge opportunity, I think, at the moment as well. We see huge volumes of data being produced by humans ourselves as a byproduct of things we're doing every day, like when we're sending text messages or when we browse on the internet. That means there's a vast amount of data that's being produced by things like that. But we're also seeing that big increase in data as well, which are actually being produced not just by humans, but also just as a byproduct of everyday sensors and machines and things like that. So we're seeing whole new data sources coming online and being used. So for instance, sensor data on ships that show you where ships are moving and can look at activity there. Sensor data from roads where we can actually then measure traffic flows more accurately. All of that is then very much, it's creating that huge opportunity to use these data sets in different ways. But clearly, I don't have time today in the 1 hour to list all of the different innovations. But I'm really pleased today that we're actually going to hear a bit more in detail about two particular innovations. So one from Indonesia and one from New Zealand. So Indonesia, BPS are going to share about the business processes that they've been developing and how they've been looking to modernize those. And then from Statistics New Zealand, we're going to hear about the innovative tools they've been using to produce domestic tourism statistics. And I know that we do hear a lot about pilots and about like different things that are being tried out in the area of innovation. But what we're really hoping today is that we can actually also hear a bit more about how you actually move a bit beyond just the piloting stage and actually then how you use that information within official statistics. So actually getting it more into that regular production phase. So I'm really excited that we can hear in a lot more depth from our two speakers today. But what I would also really love as well is we've got lots of you online, so do please interact with us as well. Please, as we're going through, as you're listening to the presentation, do put your questions in the chat bar. Also, though, put your own comments as well. It's not just about questions. You might have your own experiences to share as well on what's going on in your country. So please do put those in the chat bar, and we'll also make sure at the end that we allow enough time for questions and answers. So we're really looking forward to today's speakers, but I'm going to hand back to Alec as he's going to introduce them to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rachel, for those remarks. So now I would like to invite our first presenter, that is Ms. Isnaeni Noviati. She is a senior ICT specialist at BPS Statistics Indonesia, and she will share with us the business processes from the ICT perspective on how they are trying to innovate their production systems. So, Isnaini, you have the floor. I don't know whether you want us to share your file or you can share your slides. You are muted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Alec. I will share my presentation. Wait a minute. Okay. Okay. Presentation.
Yes, we can see it. Maybe put it in presentation mode if you can. Otherwise, it's still fine.
Okay.
You can go ahead.
Okay, it's okay now.
Yeah, proceed. Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, colleagues. So Mr. Alec already introduced about me. So my name is Ismail Novianti from BPS Statistik Indonesia. I work at IT division as a senior IT specialist. So related with the webinar theme, I will present regarding statistical business process for big data usage. So this is outlines that will be explained today. The first is overview related with what kind of method that can be used in data collection. The next we will discuss about the design of big data architecture, big data infrastructure, and statistical business process. And the last, I will give a recommendation and conclusion about how to implement statistical business process in big data implementation. So this is some of data collection method that usually conducted by statistical office. There are surveys, census, and data administrative compilation. So this is the example of a ministry that already collaborate with BPS. There are Directorate General of Immigration, Directorate General of Plantation, and Directorate General of Customs and Excise. So all of the administrative data will be used in producing statistical output. So if we talk about data collection method, in nowadays we already use or export big data utilization. So this is the other ways. Beside of data collection method, there are maybe conventional with the utilization of big data. We will have more data sources, and the type is so various. Start from unstructured and semi-structured data. So maybe when utilization of big data, it doesn't mean that we must treat big data different from another data sources. But if we want to make big data as official statistic, we should follow the basis of statistical business process. One of big data implementation case in BPS is utilization of mobile positioning data, or MPD. BPS has a MOU with one of mobile network operator to provide MPD for producing statistical output. So this is the benefit of using MPD. So the product that can be get from MPD is tourism statistic, a point of interest, commuter statistic, area delineation, analysis of linkage between the MPD and official statistic, and the measuring the relationship between community movements and air quality index. So there is some of benefit from using mobile positioning data. The use of such big data is expected to reduce the time needed to deliver official statistics to the public and respondent burden, which in turn should increase cost effectiveness. However, big data not only offer benefit but also bring challenge. So the most common challenges are about the quality, the accessibility, and we have to prepare the skill set of our organization to process the big data. The next is, this is the main point of the presentation. I will show about big data architecture. So the presentation is adapted from our paper. The title is Statistical Business Process for Big Data Usage. That was presented in 2020. So this is 2023. So there are development of our design. About big data architecture, in this picture, we can see there are four main layers. Start from business process, data, application, and technology. So business process has the important role in big data architecture because the other layer, data, application, and technology, will follow what business process that already defined before. So from specify need up to evaluate, the pace should be followed by us as statistical office, because this is the standard or process standard in GSBPM, or generic business process, statistical business process. And in BPS, the GSBPM is already developed to more detail in document statistical business framework and architecture. So if we already read about GSBPM, maybe we know that there are the process level is up to second level, but in SBFA that already developed by BPS, there are more detail until the third level. So in specified need, we will more focus to analytical objective, because if we don't know about what is our purpose to conduct data collection, we don't know what we'll do next, what is the analysis design, or how to collect the data, and so on. So the specified need is has important role in statistical business process. In this case, we can do analytical objective, define or explore the data availability, assessment data source candidates, and after we know which is data source that can be meet our requirement, so we can do the output plan. So if we talk about big data, I ensure that assessment data source candidate is important, because in assessment data source candidate, we in big data, we have various data source, and maybe there are data source that more have high quality more than the other. So we can see in this activity. And besides of the quality, we should know the continuity of the data source, because I mentioned before that the challenge of big data implementation is the accessibility. So we should know that how to access the data, and the continuity or the data, the period of updating the data. So they're all must we take into account. The second phase is design phase. It is more recommended to study the structure of data source and the select of required variables compared to the needs of the design, frame, and sample. In big data, maybe we often hear about the sampling, because in big data we just get the data, but maybe often to do the sampling. So in this case, we should know that in analysis it will affect, because it's different with data collection in conventional method. In conventional method, we already calculate, we already formulate the frame, population frame, and we do the sampling. But in big data, it is often to do. So we must explore how to utilize big data, but it will stay have or has a son of methodology. In the build phase, we will build what we are already designed before, and in collect, so different from data collection with conventional method. In collect, we because the data source is already given from data provider, whether it's from a ministry or a private sector. So we can affect, or we can determine the quality of the data, because we are already given the data by them. So in collect, there are some of points that must be considered. The first is about how to access the data, or how they can provide the data to us, because nowadays maybe they are provide the service, data service, and how to the last is how to get the metadata, because if we just get the data without metadata, maybe it will affect about how to analyze the data, because we can ensure what is variable on the data, or we just can get we don't want to just assume about what is variable on the data. In process is different from data collection method with conventional, because in process, maybe because we already get the data from data provider, there are some data integration that we must done, because in big data there are so various data, so data integration has important role in here, and data cleansing too, because we can ensure that data that we get already clean, so we must do the data cleansing activity. And for data that are unstructured or semi-structured, maybe we must do information extraction, and maybe for analysis we must do activity to prepare a machine learning method that we will use to process the data. And after process, we will analyze it. So analysis, of course, will be related with specified need, because in specified need, we already define the analytical objective. So in analysis, we will execute the output plan that will be produced in analysis. Visualize, and we will do analysis, whether it's descriptive, diagnosis, prescriptive, predictive analysis, and maybe we will do comparison with official statistics, because if we use big data, and maybe we want to compare with a variable, the same variable that we are already collect with a survey or census, to ensure the validity of result of big data implementation. And for disseminate, of course, we will based on what our design, we will generate publication. Publication is whether it's official statistic or just research. It must be determined, because towards to official statistic, there are some point that will be checked to ensure that the data valid. And the last is evaluate. Of course, we will do this in each of process. From specify need, we will evaluate the result of specify need activity. We will determine does the result can be used to the next phase, design, build, collect, process, analysis, disseminate. And for evaluate, it's just not do in the last phase, because I mentioned before that evaluate will be do in each of process. And the data is a layer that will be as a result, from each of activity, from analyze need, design, structure, structured data, rule and algorithm, collection results. So each phase will produce some output, and output it can be in the form of data or metadata. And application, of course, application will support in conducting the activity from specifying it up to evaluate. There are some system, there are data and metadata management system that already built in BPS to support all of the activity. And there are supporting tools like ETL to load or transform the data, and API management to ensure the API or to manage the API. And there are processing tools. We can use the ETL tools, or now maybe we are already familiar with Jupyter or Zeppelin, that we can flexible to do the analysis with scripting. And there are BI tool that can assist us to visualize the data. And technology, maybe it is different with data. There are not categorized as big data, because in technology, in BPS, we use enterprise data lake that adopt Hadoop technology. So the data storing and processing is conducted with a distributed approach. Maybe we already familiar with RDBMS like MySQL or Postgre and so on. So in technology for big data, we adopt Hadoop technology. And there are data warehouse to store and the data that already final and can be used to internal and external use. And role is important because in this phase, in each of phase in statistical business process, there are a person that has a role to do the activity. In specifying it, maybe we need a subject matter. In build and collect, we need a data engineer and administrator, and there are data analysts and data scientists in analysis need. There, in this role, we must define before do the statistical activity, so we know who is do the task. And this is big data infrastructure. Maybe I already mentioned about data sources, enterprise data lake, and what kind of technology we use in data exploration and business intelligence. So this is the data flow from data sources that can be from administrative, census, spatial, and big data. Will be loaded with use ETL, and there are some in EDF, data landing zone, working zone, and gold zone. And for data exploration, it can be use the data from EDL as a single source of truth. So in BPS has initiative to develop a single source of truth. So all of the data with complete metadata will be stored in enterprise data lake and will be used for various needs. For exploration, for visualization, or for dissemination. So there are internal and external system that can be used the data from single source of truth. So in big data, as I mentioned before, that enterprise data lake is a main point or an technology that used in big data implementation in BPS. And landing zone, working zone, and gold zone is based on governance in BPS. As landing zone, it will store a raw data, maybe without metadata, but after the data already has complete metadata, it will be stored in gold zone. And working zone is like a sandbox environment that user can do exploration, analysis, use the data from gold zone. So in our governance, there are division of zone like this because we want to make sure where is the data that can be used for the next process. And this is the sample or example of statistical business process that can be used in big data implementation. And in this case is mobile positioning data. In below, we can see the role that is relate with MPD implementation that are subject matter, data partnership officer, data engineer. And data engineer, it can be from BPS and MNO or mobile network operator. And there are data scientists too for from BPS. So in this case, for mobile position data, in specifying it, we must communicate with data provider about how to access the data and what is output plan that will produce from this statistical activity. And the design, we will get the data from data provider sandbox. So we don't just use environment from BPS, but we has sharing environment, so sharing resources. So we use storage and processing tools from MNO. So it can be in the form of, or maybe related with the cost and effectiveness is more effective because we don't have to move the data from MNO, but we can do the exploration in their environment. We get the access from them, and we can communicate what is the variable that we need. So in collect process, there are already know about our needs, and will use the requirement in collect phase. So data provider collection system already know what is the variable that we need. So in evaluate, in process, algorithm and rule that we are already defined, because in the case I talk about MPD, of course, we are define the rule and algorithm to produce the example or statistical output that I mentioned before, such as for area delineation or tourism statistic. There are some rules that must be implemented to get the output. And after we get the raw data, we will do aggregation and tabulation. So what kind of data we will, that will store in our storage is in the form of aggregate data. So we don't get the raw data, but aggregate data. Until the analysis, we will do the analysis. It will based on what is our output plan, and in this minute, they are data management system ODW, ODW and WDW is output data warehouse and dissemination data warehouse. For ODW, we will use it for internal use, and DDW, we use it for external use. And for evaluate, we will use metadata management system that record all of the metadata from each process, and we will use it for evaluate the pace. And this is the last recommendation and conclusion. We don't want our data lake to will become a data swamp. So there are some points that will be taken into account. There are metadata, governance, roles and responsibility, quality control, and of course, partnership, because partnership will determine whether the data source will have a good continuity or not. And there are quality, because the quality control in big data may be different from the others, because the data is given to us and we don't have we can control the quality of the data. So this is the good point to consider in big data implementation. Okay, maybe that is all my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and maybe I'm sorry if I have wrong in present the slide. And I will give back to moderator, Mr. Alec. Thank you.
Thank you, Isaneni, and those interesting presentation. And I think there is a question from Ms. Shamar in SIAP. Can I read out for you?
Okay, please.
Says, is BPS actually integrating big data with official data administrative surveys for official estimates? If yes, what is the legislative provision for the same?
Okay, in integrated or data integration, maybe from big data or data administrative, maybe I will state that big data, the data administrative can be categorized as big data too, because it in the form of register data, and for integration. Of course, there are some challenges, because the metadata from big data and at data administrative, it's some, maybe we can get all and complete metadata, but for integration we need them, because for variable from data administrative, for example, and big data. Maybe for the if we see the name, it's same, but maybe the concept or definition is different. So in integration, in data integration, we must careful, because if we don't know about the metadata of the data, I think I don't I don't have a willingness to integrate them, because it will affect the analysis of the data. Maybe that is my answer.
Thank you. Before we go to Hamish, there is a question. I see a hand from Shakil Akite. Shakil, can you ask your question? I can see your hand up.
Yes, thank you.
My name is Shakil Akhtar. I am working as a Joint Secretary in the Ministry of Planning in Bangladesh. The question raised by my colleagues, his name is Mr. Kobiruddin. He may ask some question. Please, he is asking you question.
Excellent presentation. And I found that it is a complex business process. Anyway, what are the indicators that you are generating using big data for the tourism statistics? And the indicators you are generating, is the indicator supplemented by any traditional survey? Thank you.
I would suggest, maybe because we are preempting the next presentation, so we'll hold on to your question, and then when we have the next presentation, I'll ask both Iseneni and Hamish to respond to some of those issues. I think, yeah, so we'll come back to you, Shakil, for our speakers to respond to that very practical question. So thank you so much, Iseneni, and I would like now to invite Hamish Grant. Hamish is a principal analyst at Statistics New Zealand, and he is also a member of the steering group for the regional program for the improvement of economic statistics in Asia and the Pacific. So he'll give us the practical side of how we can use some of the innovation tools. Hamish, you have the floor, and be ready to share. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Alec. Can everybody hear me okay?
At least I can hear you.
Okay, so I'll share presentation. Okay. Can you see my slides?
Yes.
Great. Very good. So as Alex said, thanks. Thank you for the introduction. Hamish Grant. I've worked primarily in the national accounts at Statistics New Zealand, but sort of across some of our economic statistics, and talk a little bit about our tourism satellite account and some of the administrative data that we use there, and a particular example which is a little bit different from what we've done in the past. So talk a little bit about the background, some of the enabling factors or things that allow us to use this administrative data approach, why we wanted to do this for the tourism satellite account, a little bit about the specific data that we're using, so this electronic card data, and then how we've used that to calculate or estimate our household tourism expenditure estimates, along with some of the opportunities and the challenges, and then a little bit of conclusion as well. So the New Zealand Tourism Satellite Account's been around for a wee while. It was first piloted in 1995. It has sort of changed over time to meet different customer needs as they have changed. It's quite heavily used by the tourism industry in New Zealand. They have particular growth targets. There's a lot of regional interest in what tourism contributes to the different parts of New Zealand, along with, policy debate and how to support tourism and the infrastructure needed for that. So it's one of New Zealand's most important statistics, and tourism makes up quite a reasonable share of New Zealand's economic activity. And the diagram's just an example of some of the information available. So we've got a bit of a, in terms of user community, so there's two kind of big parts. One's sort of the government side. So there's a government department called the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, which includes the tourism part. They actually run and fund a key input, which is the International Visitors Survey. They do regional tourism modelling, and they actually provide funding to Statistics New Zealand to produce the tourism satellite account. And the second group is sort of a number of industry non-government organisations, and they, strong supporters of our tourism satellite account. In terms of wider data and statistics system in New Zealand, so there's a few relevant kind of things to consider. So it's quite a long history of using administrative data. So it would have started out with sort of customs data and immigration card data, things that be familiar to many countries, along with expanding into using tax data. So that was sort of our original kind of approach. And Statistics New Zealand has this administrative or admin data first approach to talk a little bit more about. But the example we're going to sort of talk about today is sort of, I guess, extending from things that would have been government administrative data through to public-private data, and maybe some similarities with the big data that was given in the first, the nice presentation that was given first. So some similarities here, I think. And just to note, there is a number of other innovations that we and other people around the world have been considering, but they just noted there. But this is just a specific. So in terms of this administrative data first, sort of a traditional approach where you survey the largest units, and then in terms of, in this case, the businesses you're wanting to cover, or the households you're wanting to cover, sorry, you select a sample and you have weighting to represent the rest. Now, an administrative data first approach is a bit different. So you survey still the biggest and most important part, and then for the rest, you've got not just a sample, but you have coverage of every, or a large part, if you of the rest of the activity. So that allows you to do quite a lot more, and gets into some of the details of what you can do with that. I'll talk a little bit more about that. So some of the things that support or enable to use this administrative data approach. So a really key one is being able to manage the risks of the supply of the data. It's no longer directly in your control. So if you run a statistical survey from a national statistical organisation, then that's more in your direct control. But as soon as you shift to someone else giving you the data, there's things around legal support for that, maybe memorandums of understanding or how you engage with each other, and how you operate, along with sort of really good management or relationship management. Another thing from a statistical point of view, I guess, is the business register. So a comprehensive business register allows you to kind of link that survey data directly with your classifications and other data through the statistical units, and it also allows you to link the administrative data to that as well, which sort of links to the next point around this innovative statistical production system. So a little bit, maybe some similarities with the data lake, although it's not something New Zealand's quite made their way into yet. But there's certainly having all of the survey and administrative data linked together by that business register gives you a lot of potential for how you can use that information together, which we'll see. And the other part is having this assessment framework to sort of understand how you go at designing designing this kind of approach, but also how you monitor it over time and how and with or if or when things change. So why more administrative data, whether in particular for the tourism satellite account? So there was a few push factors. One was we were running a household survey, sample survey where you're asking households how much travel did they do, how much did they spend, when, and that was pretty costly. And as was mentioned in the introduction, it didn't allow for that granular data or detailed analysis of data that people were really interested in. So, we're pushing for more detail, more information. It couldn't be supported by the sample survey approach. And also a desire to reduce how much effort it requires from the people who are responding to the survey as well. In terms of pull factors, well, I had identified that this electronic card data was available, potentially would align with what we're wanting, and after a little bit of initial investigative work, it's identified that it would align with what we wanted conceptually, and really allowed for this increased coverage and deep analysis and granular kind of breakdowns that was never possible with the previous set of data. So very much, some of our users and customers really wanted that, and we were able to think about that in a different way with this data. The other part was that, from our organisation, Statistics New Zealand, they've set up this thing called data brokering, which is really about having people who can work with other agencies or businesses who might have data that might be of use and work out how that could be used and bring that into the organisation so we can use it in a way that, in this case, fits with our official statistics outputs as well. So on the specific data that we talk about today, so this electronic card data. So there's two bits. There's world line data. So that's sort of a payments network kind of transaction house data. So covers 70% of all New Zealand retailers. So all electronic card transactions, the cash bit's obviously an exception. It has a lot of detail, so that second point there really going into, there's a lot more information available out of that, including linking to industrial classification, where it was, and the location in particular. And the other part is around the bank data. So a smaller percentage of retail transactions, again, all electronic cards, but representative of the New Zealand population when you added in some weighting, and covers virtually all retailers with a split end of physical and online transactions. So that combined data was a pretty powerful set of information. So firstly, to note that actually a private company did the combining of the data, and in part this is linked to potentially sensitive bank information originally, and these organisations been been related, which kind of made that more possible. So in terms of what's ends up being done, there's no sort of individual person identification, so it's depersonalised, and aggregate results are provided through the Stats NZ. But the combined data really has a lot of value and potential. So you get value of spending for each transaction, the source and origin, where the cardholder is located, which was quite important in terms of tourism, and where the transactions took place, the industrial classification, and where the purchase was made. So how are we kind of using that information? So if so this is a snippet of the North Island of New Zealand. The capital's down here, which is where I live, and so these two red dots so that the capital being down the bottom. Sorry, I haven't got the point again. And so if you've got spending down there, and that's you can identify that, say that there's a group of people that have spending down here normally, and then you can see some spending further up with the other red dot, up to the more towards the top right. And if you, and in this case, that's hundreds of kilometers away from each other. So, you know, we look at, well, our definition for tourism is, 40 kilometers out of the normal local area, then we can identify that actually that spending further up on the top right in a place called Napier, which is a holiday destination in New Zealand, then we can identify that as tourism expenditure from the card data. There's a few sort of adjustments you can make for usual travel. If people are traveling relatively more than 40 kilometers to their work from home, then you can make some adjustments there. And there's also some things for things that are generally more online, so purchases of or pre-booking of accommodation and things like that are added in through a different source. But so a couple other things in terms of how we're compiling this household tourism expenditure estimate. So as mentioned before, there's no cash spending. It is a small part of the spending now, but it is still there and still want to account for it, especially changes over time. So we use, say, we have card spending, which we would associate with a particular retail industry, and we know from our other statistics how much the total income received for that industry is. So we would scale up the card spending to account for the cash, and it basically assumes the same type of spending pattern between card and cash. And then there's a couple other things we then take forward. So you want to go from industry, spending my households with an industry, which is a link to an industry, and you want to convert that to tourism products. So we can sort of do the supply use type analysis. So we use annual supply use table proportions, and there's a bit of confrontation against more household consumption expenditure as a total by commodity, just to ensure things look sensible. And then there's some additional data for things that are not covered, like imputed rental when you own your own home, and holiday home rental and things like that. And be worth noting that for the 2022 March year, the approach to that we've used is a bit slightly different, as the bank data isn't available anymore. So we sort of had to shift for a slightly less detailed approach, where we utilize spending patterns by card to sort of determine a main local area rather than a direct address kind of approach as previously. That sort of also means you can't adjust for sort of travel to work kind of impacts, but the analysis we've done was showing that's pretty small. So just on the opportunities and challenges, so a lot of opportunities with this around much improved coverage, ability to look into things in more detail and publish more details, so that granularity. Also overall, in terms of survey cost versus running this type of approach, there's some efficiencies in terms of cost there. And noting this graph on the side, over the side, so this is changes in domestic and international tourism in New Zealand, and in the recent periods, been over our COVID lockdown or COVID impacted periods. There's obviously been some pretty substantial changes, and understanding the quality of the data you're getting, so managing that quality has really been really important. The trust and sharing of data, got to really work on. Obviously, I think similar to the first presentation, there's a fair bit of work around infrastructure and data management required. And just to note that continuity of supply of data, is really something you have to work on, and isn't something you can sort of take for granted. It is an ongoing process, and you do need to be prepared for changes at times, as we have. So, I guess in conclusion, overall, it's been a really successful process shifting to this approach and using administrative data. There've been a lot of benefits. So we've reduced the respondent burden on households, or how much household survey information people have to provide. Overall, improved the quality. There've been some timeliness improvements and allowed better insights into what's happening with tourism activity. It started to push our boundaries of what we could do with administrative data, so shifting more and more into the private use, and thinking about big data and other options. Definitely strengthen relationships over time, and would just note that I guess with most statistics, do need to be ready for change, and the data supplying changes have certainly made things a little bit more challenging for us recently, but overall we're still ending up with a better sort of set of results and approach than we were able to do previously. So leave it there.
Thank you, Hamish, for sharing the experiences from New Zealand. I think there is a question for you in the chat regarding the potential overlap between the 70% electronic transactions and on the ECT data.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So yeah, there is overlap in the data, and I guess each data has been used in a slightly different way. So the 70% of the retail transactions, that's effectively used for sort of the values, and the bank data, or the other 20%, is really used to help distribute that information across regions and where the activity happened and the location. So they're sort of not, in terms of value, they're not really being added together. They're just sort of bringing different attributes to or different dimensions to the overall piece of information. But yeah, it's a good question. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think there was that question from Bangladesh about the specific indicators. I think there are some indicators that have been already highlighted, I think, in the fourth slide on tourism statistics, point of interest, and commuter statistics, as well as area delineation. So I hope our colleague from Bangladesh can take note of that. And there is another question for you, Hamish, in the chat.
Okay, cool. I see it. So yeah, in New Zealand, how are you addressing the challenge of continuity of the data source? How are you using legislation? So we have a relatively new update to our Data and Statistics Act, we call it, at the end of 2022. It provides quite a lot more opportunity or legislative power to collect information, including big data and really any data that can be used for statistical purposes. I guess a lot of the work that we've done and continue to do is very much in the building strong relationships to sort of ensure willing supply of data. There is opportunities or possibilities of being more forceful with that, but we don't tend to go down that path. I guess in this case, the changes in data supply are really between two external private providers, which is in part makes it a little bit more difficult. So the bank data going to another private provider who then provides us with combined data. But I think there is an interest in the bank data in general, and I think New Zealand's approach is likely to be working on sort of building understanding of what can be done and whether there's what we would call, I guess, a social license or a public willingness for that kind of information to be shared for statistical purposes. And that's likely to be a little, a process to go through, and bringing, I guess, New Zealanders along on the journey, if that answers your question.
Thanks, Hamish. And actually, Ricky has just posted some link to Stats New Zealand on the legislation and policy. So I think that would also be helpful to others that are interested to see how you're dealing with these issues. So I can see we are exactly by the hour of 12, and I would like just to take this opportunity to thank both Hamish and Isaneni for coming to share their experiences on how they are using big data from the very ICT side, as well as giving some very candid examples of how they're actually working on very specific domains. Yeah, so finally, Rachel, maybe you have some final remarks, please.
Just to say a huge thank you to both of you. There was a lot in there, but really great to actually hear more about how we're using big data innovations in official statistics and into that mainstream. But I think it also shows there's a lot more work to be done. So thank you so much for sharing your experiences and for being so open as well with that. And we look forward to hearing more as we go on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank everyone for showing up. And the slides for this will be available on the ESCAP page, which has just been posted there, and whereas the meeting record. So thank you very much, and have a good day, good evening.